Good morning. It's good to see everybody. I'm going to talk fast because they told me I had 20 minutes, okay? 20 minutes. That's an introduction for me. Am I right? How many of you'd say amen to that at least? Amen. If you're a guest this morning, don't get used to this length, okay? We're usually here for an hour 10. It's going to be about 45 minutes and then a party, all right? I choose to think of every Sunday as a party around here, just without the water slides. So that's all right. Hey, listen, my name is Ryan. If you are a guest this morning, and I'm the lead pastor here at Crossroads Church, and my day has already been made. Do you want to know why my day has been made? My month has been made. My year has been made because I was talking to somebody today, and they thought I was in my early 30s. I mean, I'm late 40s, people, late 40s. That's pretty exciting, though. So we could call it a day right now. And I'm going to give extra in the offering because I feel like the Lord really blessed me this morning with that one. So it's good to see everybody. If you're a guest this morning and you have some questions about our church, about me, anything, I'd love to meet with you. Inside your program folder there is my cell phone number. Just text me, and I would absolutely set up a time. We'll go out, we'll have coffee, we'll have an old-fashioned, whatever you prefer. It doesn't matter to me as long as you're buying, okay? But it'll be fun. If you're around and I'd love to hear your story and catch up and answer any questions you have about this beautiful place called Crossroads, which has been around for about 27 years, really trying to be a space for people who don't feel like they belong in church. And that's what we're continuing to do around here, all right? So let me ask you this question. How many of you have ever felt overwhelmed by life? Raise your hand up nice and high. Do not lie to me. You are in church. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are. Life can be a bit overwhelming, right? Life can happen. And sometimes life happens and it's not fun, right? And we get overwhelmed. Life is like that's not what I was going to say. I knew you thought that's what I was going to say, but life is like a pressure cooker, people. There's a hint right here. I brought my pressure cooker with me today. It looks like Chewbacca. Does anybody else have this one? William Sonoma Chewbacca, Christmas present a few years ago. How many of y'all have a pressure cooker? Yeah. Do you love it? Love it. It's amazing. The Instant Pot. Right? The Instant Pot. The idea of the Instant Pot is what? You put your stuff in here, put a little bit of water in there with it, close it up, plug it in, push the right button, and then what happens? In just a fraction of the time, through the beauty and the magic of pressure, your food is cooked. Has it always worked out perfectly for you? Just out of curiosity. Anybody have an Instant Pot story you need to share right now? It'll be like old-fashioned church, testimony time. Just pass the microphone around. Those were the days, man. You never knew what people were going to say. You just had to let it roll, too. Like, you just let it roll. You're like, oh, Martha, thank you. That's wonderful. If you're here today and your name is Martha, I just offended you. I apologize. It's just a random name I picked. But yes, the Instant Pot. Now, here's the funny thing. So it uses pressure. I don't know if you know this or not, but Instant Pots have exploded. And lawsuits have been filed, right? If you Google, I was going to show you some videos, but they all come with a graphic warning, which, usually doesn't bother me, but I was like, well, it's a party. There might be kids in the room. I don't know, right? But life really is a lot like these pressure cookers, right? We're trying to make things in life. How many of you want to be a success in life? Raise your hand up nice and high. Okay, if you don't have your hand up, let's talk. Okay, it's always good to want to be a success, right? We want to be successful in our adventures, right? If we have a career or a job or relationships, families, we're navigating all these areas of our lives, right? And we want to be successful. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to be successful with our finances, right? And even a life of faith, right? Walking what we call around here the peacemaking path, right? That's how we talk about the way the word Christian is used for 85 million different things. That's why I don't use it a whole lot. I've been accused of saying I'm not a Christian, so let me say it real clear right now. I have no idea what your definition of the word Christian is, so I might not be, okay? I might not be. But what I am is a person who is deeply committed to this radical peacemaking path of the historical Jesus, who I believe has set for us a beautiful way to restore human dignity, to restore and bring the kingdom of heaven to earth, right? That's what I'm on, okay? But here's the thing, like that faith, that can be a pressure cooker. I mean, how many of you were around for the last 7 weeks? Like total downer, 7 weeks. Wah, wah, unacceptables. Here's what's breaking the world. Here's how billions of people on the planet are suffering. And guess what? It's your responsibility as a person who's following Jesus to change it. That's heavy. There's a lot to it. It's overwhelming. It's heartbreaking. It's why this guy named Paul, who really is the founder of the Christian movement as we know it, Jesus really isn't the founder of the movement, in case you ever wondered that. I think Jesus would, if he was in a grave, he would roll over in it to know that we started a religion in his name. I think he'd be like, what? I was ending this nonsense. But here we are, because that's all we know how to do is create rules and structure. But it's okay. I have a career, okay? So let's not go crazy, Jesus, all right? But here's the thing, right? Like, it was a big deal even for Paul, because when Paul, in one of his earliest letters, Galatians, most scholars believe is an authentic letter of Paul. It's one of his earliest letters. He's writing it to this community of people that are really questioning and exploring what does it mean to really follow Jesus and be Jewish at the same time. And this is what he said in Galatians chapter 6. He told these folks 2,000 years ago, let's not grow weary in doing good, for we'll reap at harvest time if we don't give up. Maybe you've heard it said, let's not grow weary in doing good, for at just the right time, at just the right season, we will reap the harvest, right? Like, you don't write this, right? Paul doesn't write this if you're not already weary. How many of y'all have been weary in doing good? How many of y'all are in a relationship right now and it's a good relationship? How many have ever gotten weary in that relationship? Yeah. You had to look to get permission. Can I get, no. Perfectly, lots of stamina here. No, I've never been. Sorry, I just created a serious conversation for you this afternoon after the bash, right? It's the pressure. It's the pressure, right? That's what we grow weary from. And here's what's fascinating. Here's what's lovely about this little device right here. You plug it in, you push your button, but there's this little knob on the top, right? The pressure release valve. And when it comes time, when your cook is over, you either let it do a natural release, which means the pressure's going to, or you hit this little button and then whoosh, what happens? All the steam comes out, right? Anybody ever burnt their hand on that steam? Everybody who has one of these does it. No matter how hard you try, you're like, I don't know, I got to. And then you actually like, something's wrong with it. And then it sprays over you and you end up with a 3rd-degree burn, right? But without a good pressure release valve, not only will the Instant Pot explode, but we will explode. Now is the moment of truth. How many of you have ever exploded from too much pressure? Raise your hand up nice and high. How many of you are sitting next to somebody who's exploded because of too much pressure and not a big enough pressure release valve, right? It's true. Explosions, they do what? They damage us. They damage us. They damage the people around us. They damage our future. And it's such a beautiful picture if you do watch a video of a pressure cooker exploding. People come in and they film the after effects. And what is, there's food everywhere. That's what happens. Well, in the Bible, right, this collection of writings put together by our spiritual ancestors, basically saying, hey, this is the best we got. This collection of writings, there's a book in it called Ecclesiastes. How many of you have ever heard of Ecclesiastes? Anybody not ever heard of Ecclesiastes? Raise your hand nice and high. You are the normal people, okay? It's normal to have never heard of the book Ecclesiastes, all right? Those of us that have heard of it, we're not normal, okay? So this book Ecclesiastes is part of the Jewish Bible, right? Or what Christians kind of pejoratively, unfortunately, call the Old Testament. But it's part of the Christian Old Testament. And Ecclesiastes is a really interesting book, gets a lot of flack. A lot of segments of the Christian movement don't like Ecclesiastes because it's real. Especially white American churches, they don't like Ecclesiastes because Ecclesiastes tells it like it is, right? And it tells you like life doesn't always work out the way you think it should. Just because you work hard doesn't mean you're going to succeed, right? So Ecclesiastes is this book in the Hebrew Bible. It's traditionally attributed to King Solomon, who in the Hebrew tradition was the wisest king. But here's the deal. We don't know who wrote this. It doesn't say who wrote it. It doesn't claim. That's just part of the tradition. The name of the book in Hebrew is called Kohelet, which means teacher. It means like wise one, teacher, even preacher. Let's not go crazy though, you know. But it kind of explains this type of genre. It's like a sermon almost, this big, long, repetitive sermon where it say the same thing at least 2-3 times. It's like a good sermon, right? It's part of what's called wisdom literature. If you're familiar with what wisdom literature is, Proverbs and Job, they kind of focus on philosophical reflections, practical insights, right? And as we think about this book, I want to read a couple of verses to you, but I got to give you a little background to it because you got to know the context, all right? You got to get what this is all about. So this book has some central themes in it, and it really is dealing with the enigmatic nature of life. How many of y'all know life doesn't make sense all the time? You can work really hard, you can do all the right things, and you can still get, the technical term is screwed. Anybody? Yeah, come on, let's just be real. We're in Ecclesiastes. Today's the day to be real, all right? And so this book kind of deals with it. And there's this key phrase in the book called vanity of vanities. That's the phrase, vanity of vanities. And it comes from a Hebrew word, chavel, which means vapor or breath. And it's this idea that things in this life are like vapors and breaths. They're here and they're gone and you can't trust them. And so the book wrestles with all this like apparent futility of the human existence and human endeavors, right? The unpredictability of fate, right? And the inevitability of death. Right? It is a statistic that holds true. 1 out of 1 people die. And that's what this book is kind of dealing with. How do you make sense of it all? How do we live in this? Right? And so there's some big themes. So the first of all is the vanity of life. It repeats over and over again that this life is transient, it's elusive, it's silly to just pursue all these worldly things and achievements. It actually speaks to the limits of wisdom, particularly human wisdom. Ecclesiastes acknowledges that, hey, wisdom is important and it offers a lot, but there are limitations in what our wisdom can do to provide ultimate answers to the big mysteries of life. What the book calls the fear of God is a big theme. This is a tricky phrase, the fear of God. We have to remember this is a highly theistic world that this is being produced out of, where there are gods, plural. And these gods control everything. They control the weather, the plants. They control whether you are sick or whether you are well. And so the fear of God is a big deal in Ecclesiastes, right? Saying that there's this conclusion to it that you just have to have a reverence for the divine and you need to follow the commandments, right? And that was a pretty standard way of understanding from an ancient cultural perspective. And then finally, there's this really cool part of Ecclesiastes, what I really want to focus in on today, is that there's this enjoyment of the simple pleasures of life that you just have to do. So despite this really somber tone that the book has, kind of a want downer, this book really encourages the reader, right? The teacher encourages the reader to find joy in simple, everyday pleasures and to see them as divine gifts. What we might call in our modern tongue, fun. Right? The writer of Ecclesiastes is basically saying, you gotta have fun if you're gonna survive life. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 24 says, there is, get this, nothing better. It's a big phrase. There is nothing better for mortals, that's you and me, than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. Can I get it? Amen. Be like, finally, I've been coming to this church for 12 weeks. Haven't heard one good thing. Now I get it. Need to have a party more often. It puts Ryan in a good mood. Nothing better than to find enjoyment in their toil. There's an acceptance of toil, and there's nothing better. There's no better antidote than that. And he says this, the writer, the teacher says, this I saw as from the hand of God, that this is a divine blessing. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 13 says something very similar. It says, moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take, what's the word? We don't like to say that word in church, I know, okay? Just say it in the most creepy way you can, all right? Just say the word. I'm gonna read the verse again. I want you to say it in the most creepy way you possibly can for a little bit of fun today, okay? So moreover, it's God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. Simple pleasures keep the soul light when life is heavy. The simple pleasures of life. It is important and it is a spiritual practice to have fun. if we're going to maintain any measure of stick-to-itiveness, if we're going to actually move the needle on these unacceptable truths that we talk about as a community, that we say this is what drives our faith, if we're going to invest in our marriages, in our parenting, in our partnerships, if we're going to invest in our businesses, if we're going to invest in our jobs, in our neighbors, we have to put fun into the middle of it, or else we will explode. I love these two verses in Ecclesiastes 8 because these two verses in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 14 and 15, they speak to such a deep truth that every one of us has felt. Look at what it says here. It says, there is a vanity. Remember, that's one of the key phrases. There's a foolishness. There's a vanity. There's something that makes no sense. It exists and I don't know why. Here's the deal. There's a vanity. It takes place that there are righteous people. Now think righteous is not necessarily moral, like in terms of, sometimes we think of morality in terms of righteousness, but righteousness from a scriptural perspective and a Hebrew word is really about the way we treat one another. A lot more deals with ethics sometimes, doing rightness, right? Have you ever heard that phrase, that person did right by me? Does that make sense? That's more what we're talking about here than like purity laws and purity and like here's the religious rules, and a righteous person is a person who goes to church every week and gives big in the offering. And while I appreciate all those things, that's not what this is talking about. That word righteous is really talking about you are treating one another well. You're throwing goodness into the universe, right? You're throwing that positive energy out there. You're present. You're buying the cup of coffee for the person who's hurting at work. You're listening. You are slow to anger, right? Quick to listen. And it says, here's the thing, that there are righteous people who are treated according to the conduct of the wicked. In other words, there are people that do all the right things and they get, again, the technical term is screwed. Right? They do all the right things and then they're treated and get the reward that a wicked person gets. And here's what's even crazier. Wicked people, how many of y'all know a wicked person? And I'm not talking like New England, Boston, wicked good. I'm talking like Hebrew Bible wicked, okay? Like, I stopped saying that when I got here. Like people looked at me funny when I was like, oh man, that was a wicked good restaurant. They were like, huh? So I let that one go. It's part of it, part of assimilating into the culture here in Colorado. Okay, so wicked people who are treated according to the conduct of the righteous. And then you have these people who are absolute nightmares. Do you know anybody that's an absolute nightmare? If you don't, then you're it. You know that's how it works. You're like, no, I don't know a nightmare. I'm like, well, I'm here to reflect just truth in your heart. But isn't that crazy? Like, that's what he's saying. This is a vanity. And what's the solution to this? It's so frustrating. It's so unfair. It's so not right. And it exists. So what should you do? Here's what the teacher says. I commend enjoyment. That's what you do. For there's nothing better for people under the sun than to eat. And this guy likes to eat and drink. He's my kind of guy, right? Eat and drink and enjoy themselves. For this will go with them in their toil through the days of life that God has given them under the sun. That no matter how unfair it is, no matter how crazy life is, you can bring fun into your life and you can carry that with you into all those things. Here's the fun helps you deal with the unfair nature of life. Raise your hand up nice and high if you would agree that life is not fair. Maybe you've been on the recipient, positive. I've been on the recipient side of that unfairness. White, heterosexual male, like American, cha-ching. I mean, I hit the privilege lottery. But I recognize that that is not the case for so many others. Life is unfair. And there is this beauty in fun. I have traveled the world. I've had this privilege of being able to travel into some of the most dire places. I've walked the dump sites in the Philippines, in Manila, with families who live on the dump site and their children work picking through the garbage to be able to help provide for food. I have walked in those places. I've walked in some of the most awful places where there is such injustice and such pain, and yet I have experienced so much joy in those spaces. And we ought to learn something there. So here's what I don't want us to miss as we get ready to get out and have this party. Fun is the release valve that keeps us from exploding under the pressure of life. Fun, you gotta have fun. I'm telling you right now as your pastor, you gotta have fun. If you don't have fun, you're gonna go to hell, okay? Just kidding, I don't even believe in hell, so it's fine, don't worry about it. It's a true story, not the way you think of it. I don't believe in that nonsense. Listen, if you want to survive the reality of life and you want to survive the hard work of a life of faith, you got to have fun. You got to not take yourself too seriously. You know, one of our core values here at Crossroads is fun. It's one of our values. We say if we're going to do it, we're going to have fun. I remember as a young person, I was even under 30, right? And I remember having this like epiphany about this whole church world thing that I was in and I had grown up in. And I remember saying to myself, if I can't have fun doing this, I'm out. I'm out. And I was still in like pretty oppressive fundamentalist church world. Maybe that was the beginning of the downfall for me back then. I was like, we should be having fun. Like, what are you talking about? Shut up and get back over there. Get in your seat. But like, I said, if I can't have fun doing this, I don't want to do it. And it's not because it's always fun, because I'm telling you, that's not true. But without it, you can't navigate it. So in your everyday normal life, how do you live this out? Okay, I'm going to give you some super practical wisdom right now. Worth the price of admission, okay? Number one, have intentional fun. You got to plan it. Fun doesn't always just happen. You got to be intentional about it, okay? So have intentional fun. Plan it. Put it in your life. Figure out what brings you joy. Figure out what you like to do and do it. And plan to do it, okay? So be intentional. And then I want to encourage you to have cheap fun. How many frugal people in the house are like, amen, amen. All right, those are the frugal ones, raise your hand. I know those are the ones that are tight on the giving. We got to loosen them up a little bit, okay? We'll start paying the bills if those of you that just raise your hands get a little freer, all right? And just trust in the universe. No, listen. Cheap fun. Fun does not have to be expensive. Fun does not have to cost money, right? So figure out what are the things that you enjoy that you can do that can be inexpensive and cheap, okay? Second thing is this. Have expensive fun, okay? Have some expensive fun. Now, don't have irresponsible expensive fun. I'm not saying like, go have some fun with MasterCard or Visa, all right? But listen, save up, plan, enjoy things in life. Listen, I can tell you right now, I'm pretty confident if I wasn't in this business, and I probably shouldn't call it a business, I just offended a whole bunch of you. If I wasn't in this wonderful profession of ministry, okay, I would probably be a jerk. More of a jerk than I am. Because like I do really like nice things. Like I could be a total prima donna. Like I'm pretty confident of that. Like it's scary. Like every now and then I find myself and I'm like, whoa, yeah, you would definitely be contributing to the unacceptable truths, Ryan, if you were not constantly in this, right? Like I like nice things and I can have a lot of fun and I can spend a lot of money, right? We can all do that. And that's okay at times. It's okay at times. So spend money. Enjoy life. That's a huge part of what we're supposed to be doing, right? I have a friend and we had this conversation. It's always like, what's the whole point of life, right? Y'all ever have these friends you have this conversation with? Like it's a super pointless conversation because nobody really knows, but we both grew up in like fundamentalist conservative Christianity. And so like the whole point of life was to make sure people didn't go to some fantasy place called hell where there was this really awful idea of God that was going to burn people forever and ever. So your whole life, that was the purpose you existed for. That's a lot of pressure on a 13-year-old, right? That's why we don't do that here. Like no 13-year-old should walk around imagining that every person they meet is going to go to hell and it's their fault. Okay, that's a side note as to why what we're doing here is really, really, really important, okay? Because no 13-year-old, no 12-year-old, no 8-year-old, no 7-year-old should ever grow up believing that eternity of some poor individual hangs in the balance on whether or not they will take their Bible to school and pray at the flagpole. Okay, that's not even in the notes. That just came out. I apologize. All right. So have expensive fun. I don't know what that had to do with it, but that's my soapbox. I get on it every now and then. Have expensive fun. Now, here's the thing. Have fun with fun people. Okay, listen, you don't have to be friends with everybody. That's another weird thing that religion puts on us. Like, you got to love everybody. Yes, love everyone. You don't have to like everyone. Those are two very different things. Okay? So don't swerve to hit people. That's a good rule in life, right? That would be the opposite of love. But you don't have to spend your life hanging out with people that are just draining you. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Free yourself of that nonsense. So when you have fun, do it with fun people. Now, you might not be my kind of fun person. Totally cool. I might not be your kind of fun person. That's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to be best of friends. We don't have to enjoy it. But find those people that share your interests and have fun with them, because shared experiences are powerful. There's something about where 2 or 3 people are gathered doing something together. It's wonderful. So have fun with fun people. And then I want to encourage you to remember that pressure creates diamonds and explosions, okay? So as I talk about fun, I have to temper this with some responsibility. This little machine right here, if this pressure valve is just left open, it will never cook anything. It's just the whole time, it's just gonna hiss. At some point, you gotta close the valve and have a little pressure in your life if you wanna do anything productive, okay? So this is a balance, right? There's not really a fine line. There is just a line, though, where we become irresponsible and we aren't productive, right? We have to have some pressure, because pressure keeps us productive. Pressure keeps us creative. Pressure keeps us, as humanity, we are more ingenious in our invention and in our problem solving when there's pressure on us. So just remember that, right? It's a balancing act. It's not 6 days you have fun and 1 day you rest, okay? There's something wrong with that equation too. I've met that person and I want to smack that person sometimes. I'm like, yeah, well, of course you don't have any money. I don't know what to tell you. Get a job. And these are people who could work, okay? I'm judging the people who can work. I just want you to know that's totally different, right? But there is that reality that we can slip into irresponsibility, right? And we can find ourselves in an imbalance there. So we work, we're productive, we engage, we fight the 5 unacceptable truths, but we also throw parties. And they are not mutually exclusive ideas. They have to be blended together for holistic health, right? A holistic, healthy individual can live under pressure, can sustain that, because they built into their lives that intentional fun. They have fun people that they're around, and they release the pressure valve as they need to do that. This past weekend, I had a pressure valve release weekend. We went away for our anniversary. Wendy and I went down to Denver. 26 years we've been married. That prompted how could you be married? Some of you are like, all right, we'll clap. I know you want us to. No, listen. And so we go down there and we just spend 2 days just having fun, right? Went out to eat, went to a piano bar, dueling pianos. It was really fun. Did a whiskey tasting. I actually ended up at a Jonas Brothers concert somehow. I don't have any idea how that happened, but I was there. While Wendy ended up at an AJR concert. It was just a very weird weekend. But, so we had that. That for us was this intentional fun. We planned that. We knew we were doing that. But then we also have the cheap fun, the just playing cards at night with the family, watching TV. By the way, how many of you are watching Trying on Apple TV? Anybody watching Trying? Yeah. If you're not, don't come back here until you've watched it. It is that good. Because I'm telling you, there's probably going to be a teaching series like Ted Lasso, okay? It is that good. So you might want to check it out. So there's cheap fun, right? Engage in all those things. And the reality is you become better because you become a healthier person when you're having fun, right? You become holistically healthier. And the research tells us this. This isn't just some ancient document from 2,000 years ago. Science actually is helping prove this is correct, right? Science and research tells us that people who have fun have lower levels of stress. They exhibit more positive emotions. They have decreased levels of anxiety and depression. They have more creative energy in their life. They have greater mental agility and flexibility and adaptability, higher levels of resilience. I know that sounds like an awful life, doesn't it? Just terrible. The last thing I want to have is less anxiety, less depression. I don't want more positive emotions in my life. Give me a break. So right before we have our party, we're going to have communion today, and we're going to celebrate communion. And as we have communion, just a reminder, everyone is invited to the table. It's for everyone. It's a symbol of love, a symbol of universal love, and how that universal love strengthens us. So we have bread and juice at the tables, and at tables around the room you're welcome to during this song. So what's God inviting you to? A couple of things. Maybe one, stick around. Just stick around for the summer bash. I'm going to be in the dunk tank at noon. All right? So listen, if you think I talk too long, this is your opportunity. But I found out that they're like raising money. You have to actually like buy so sorry. That's a good idea, I guess. Right? So stick around and just have some fun and maybe get to know some people. Now listen, for those of you that are here and like you've been around for a little bit, like will you look around, and if you see somebody and maybe you've never met them before, say hi, introduce yourself. This is a great opportunity for someone who may be newer to Crossroads to feel very loved and welcomed by people other than me, who's paid to welcome them, okay? There's something more powerful when normal people do it, okay? So look around, introduce yourself. You don't have to say, are you new here? Because chances are they're not, and you just haven't seen them, and they've been here for 7 years, and now you offend them. Just say, I don't think we've met. That's my trick right there. I don't think we've met. Then most of the time they go, yeah, we have 6 times, but at any rate, you all are so gracious. So introduce yourself, stick around. Plan a fun experience sometime in the next 90 days. So this is that intentional fun. Maybe God's inviting you to do that. Maybe you want to go deep into this, get a master's degree in fun. Make a list of 5 things you can do every day or every week to have fun and release some of the pressure from your life. So I want to invite you to stand this morning if you're able to as we sing this song, All Creatures of Our God and King, and we have communion together, and then I'll be back for our blessing and to send you out of here.